What's up, you guys? Let me know down in the comments how you found me in this video. I'm trying to make sure that the content that I create is getting to the right eyes and to the people that it's supposed to help. This is a very simple structure that anybody can implement on any income, even low incomes. I don't care if you make $30,000, $50,000, or $200,000, but this is a great fundamental steps and foundation that you can build to really get your finances in the shape that they need to be. I started this system and I built these four types of account, or excuse me, I created these four types of accounts that I'm going to show you in this video 5 years ago when I was not making six figures, and it has transformed my money because I was tired of having a negative account balance. I was tired of not having enough money to pay my bills. I was tired of not having money to cover the basic expenses or even emergency. So right now, let's say, and this is, we don't judge. This is a free space. This is a channel where we do not judge, okay? But let's say that this is your checking account, and out of your checking account, you pay all of your bills, your expenses, your paycheck gets direct deposited here, right? Everything comes out of this one checking account. Doesn't matter who you bank with, Chase, Wells Fargo, Ally, it don't matter. But the problem that you run into with having all of your bills and your expenses coming out of this checking account, and then you're also using that money for your expenses like groceries, gas, your kids' needs, sometimes you can run into a negative account balance, NSF fees, NSF fees, checks balancing. You don't have enough coverage for every bill that comes out of this because you need to separate these accounts. You need to separate your bills from your expenses, right? They need to be two separate accounts. So KD, how does this work? We're going to break it down. Okay? I want to make sure that you guys can see this board very clearly. So when you get paid, you have your gross income, right? Your GI or whatever. You have your gross income, then you have your taxes, Medicare, federal, blah, blah, blah. If you contribute to a retirement account, that stuff all comes out of your check, right? So when you get your direct deposit, you don't get your gross, you get your net income. And your net income is the money left over after all the taxes and everything else have been taken out of your check. So with this net income, you want to take an estimate. I'm going to write this over here of your bills. So say your rent, your mortgage, say your rent is, I don't know, $1,700. Your utilities run you about $300, and other bills are $50. So now you have $2,050 worth of bills. So with your paycheck, you want to take a really good estimate of all of these bills, right, out of this net income. So now, using this example of your bills, and again, you guys, these figures, this is just an example to illustrate the four types of accounts. So the reason why you take a good estimate of your bills, which is $2,050, say your net income after taxes and everything else is about $2,200. Your bills, you estimated your bills to be $2,050. So your net income minus your bills are $150. So you would take that $150 and put it in an expense checking account, which is your primary checking account. Then you would take the $2,050 and put it in a bills checking account. So the $150 is what you have to manage until your next paycheck. Groceries or gas. Now, this is just an illustrative example. Your income could be higher or lower, but the system still works with any type of income. But you see the system of having your bills versus your expenses separated. So when you go out to eat or your kid needs some new shoes, you don't have to worry about Netflix eating up the cost of your kid's shoes, or, oh crap, I need to buy dinner. Well, you don't have to worry about that because you know all of your bills are sitting in a separate account and it's not touching any of that. So, which leads me to my second is an expense account. Your bills, you need a separate checking account for your bills, and you need a separate checking account just for your expenses. This is a game changer. It is an absolute game changer when it comes to managing your finances and giving yourself structure. This is what kept me from always having a negative account balance. This what kept me from not having enough money to take care of my basic needs. So now we're going to talk about the third type of account that you should have. So right now we've already covered so far having a bill checking account, having a checking account for your expenses, and how your bills and your expenses should be separated. The next one is a sinking fund. So a sinking fund, think of it as a short-term emergency fund allocated for a future expense or emergency. So when you think about emergency fund, I think about an emergency fund that covers mortgage, rent, possibly car note, the needs that you absolutely cannot live without unless there is a loss of income or unexpected layoff. That's when I think of an emergency fund. A sinking fund is a little bit different. It's emergencies that you may or may not have, but they're not as critical as something. A sinking fund is a level up. So the expense and bill account that I talked about earlier, these are to meet your basic needs. Okay? This is how you survive. You survive with an expense account and a bill account, making sure that all of the necessities it takes to keep a roof over your head, to put food on the table, to provide for you and your children. These are the accounts that are necessary, right? Separating church and state. Sinking fund is deep diving. So you could have a sinking fund for multiple things. You could have sinking fund for a wedding. You could have a sinking fund for your kids' tuition, and it could be a high yield savings account or a money market account. You could have a sinking fund for your car. I actually have a sinking fund for my car, actually. Um, I know that I just bought a pre-loved car last year at CarMax. Super great experience. It was basically a 9-month old car, but the interest rate was bomb, and I got it basically a brand new car without having to worry about depreciation. So I actually have a sinking fund for my car. It's for new tires. It's for if I ever got in an accident, God forbid, and I had to pay my insurance, the $500 or whatever they call it. I can't think of the name right now, but I have one for my car. I have one for travel, and I have one for medical expenses. I do. There is a dental procedure that I need to get done, and I have a sinking fund for that. So for you, you can create multiple sinking funds. So with the sinking funds, think about short-term goals or expenses that you may have in 3 to 6 months. It could be in the near future that you want to set money aside for. I even have a sinking fund for manis and petties, and it's not extravagant. It's not like $8,000 or so. It's not extravagant. I have $217 in my sinking fund for personal care, and I put about $7.50 per paycheck into the sinking fund. But I've been contributing to the sinking fund for a little bit over a year. But you get the drift when it comes to a sinking fund. So this um and like fancy things that aren't necessities, but think about like short term emergencies. Say that if you have indeed an emergency, say that your hours got cut back, say you had a shift of job change, or your spouse became sick and you had to cut back on the hours or whatever, and you got injured. Now your paychecks are not what they used to be, but with a sinking fund for whatever goal or short-term emergency that you have, now you have a system and you have money allocated for that short term. The sinking fund, I'm going to wrap this up with the sinking fund so we can go to the next account. Say, for example, your net income after taxes, Medicare, say it's $1,800. So when you get $1,800, say you tell your employer, hey, I want you to take $40 out of the net income and I want you to put it as a direct deposit to Bank A. So that you have a sinking fund and this is Bank A, and your check gets deposited into Bank B. So really, your take-home pay is $1,760, which is minus the $40, and the $40 is now deposited at sinking fund. I'm using this as an example if you get paid biweekly. So if you were to get paid, if you were to do $80 on a biweekly paycheck for 6 months, that's $480 that you have in your sinking fund. If you were to contribute $40 per paycheck for 12 months, that's $960. $960. So what the point that I'm trying to drive here is one of the best ways to create and maintain a sinking fund is to automate the savings that goes into your sinking fund so that it's money that doesn't get touched or spent, but it's money that builds so that when you go to work every day, you have something to look forward to because now you're slowly building a short-term emergency fund called your sinking fund. Now, everybody's pay cycles may be different. There's some people that get paid weekly, people that get paid monthly. So you would just have to allocate and figure out what you can realistically afford because it's not about the amount, it's about the consistency. So that, my friends, is a sinking fund. The last account that we're going to talk about in this video is the emergency fund. So the emergency fund is kind of like a graduation. So what we reviewed thus far, I'm going to move you guys up. What we reviewed so far is having actually, you know what? I'm not going to rewrite because I already have it here. But what we reviewed so far is having a checking account for your bills, having a checking account for your expenses, having a sinking fund for short-term emergencies, could be dental, medical, whatever you need cash for, why you should automate your savings to be deposited into a sinking fund that's separate from your main expense account for a specific goal or emergency that you want to meet in the next 3 to 6 months, maybe even a year. Now, the next step up after a sinking fund is the emergency fund. So, with an emergency fund, I would say, I know the rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months, but for folks that have a lower income, I would say the goal you should work towards is 1 month. And then once you build consistency and you find something that works with your salary and the income for your household, then you can bump it up to 3 to 6 months. But I would say start off with a month, 1 month of emergency fund. And this is also something that you should automate from your paycheck. And this is what I do as well. All of my savings, when it comes to my sinking funds and my emergency fund, I automate all of it because I am a spender. I always find crap on Shein and Amazon that I think that I need. And if I don't do that, I wouldn't have the savings. I wouldn't have the emergency savings. So I would sit down and I would get a good estimate of how much it costs you to live every month, your cost of living. You know what this number is. If it's $2,700 a month, if it's $2,200 a month, that's the first thing. This is what I would do before you set up the automated deposits into your emergency fund, because this is kind of the step A before you move into that direction, if that makes sense. So number one, I would take an estimate of how much it costs me to live. That's bills only. I know I write like a third grader. The second thing I would do is make a really good estimate of your expenses. So bills are like things that have to get paid no matter what. Your lights, your electricity, water, rent, mortgage, whatever it is, I consider that a bill. Expenses are things that you need from they're not necessities, but they're necessities like groceries, gas. If you have a Tesla, you probably don't have to worry about that. Insurance, daycare, whatever your expenses are, get a total amount. And I'm going to say COL, cost of living. And that is an aggregate of your bills and your expenses summarized together. And once you know how much it costs to live, then the next step that you want to do is you want to look at your pay stubs and you want to sum up. I'm trying to think of something realistic. Maybe a month or 2 months of your net income. You need to have a realistic picture of what your take home pay is. So you need to sit down and say, what are my bills? What are my expenses? How much does it cost me to live? What's the total? Then I want to go look at my pay stubs. I want to look at my pay stubs for up to a month or 2 months. And I want to calculate not my gross. You live out of your net, honestly. You don't live out of your gross. The gross looks cute when you file your taxes, but the net income is what you live out of. And you want to take a total of your net income. Okay. And that you want to subtract your net income from your total cost of living and see what that number is. And if it's positive, then figure out how much you can take out of that net difference of your net income and your cost of living and say, okay, I can only afford to put away $30 towards my emergency fund. Again, it's about the consistency. It's not about the amount. And then if this number is negative, then you need to go back and see, okay, what do I need to cut back on? Do I need to look for a new job? Do I need to pick up extra hours? You have to do what works for your household. I'm just only giving you structure and tips. That's it, folks. I really hope this video helped you guys to give you some visual representation of 4 types of accounts that you should have. Don't feel bad about your income. Don't feel bad about where you are in life. Everything is a stepping stone in practice. If you can only start with a bill account, just start with a bill account, separating your bills from your expenses. Don't stress about an emergency fund and a sinking fund. Start off with whatever steps are easy for you and your money and your household. If you got the bills and the expense account mastered, then try to create one emergency fund or a sinking fund. Again, it's not about the amount or hard and fast rules. It's all about flexibility and what works for you and your lifestyle. I'll see you guys in the next video.